The boatman never gave me his name. He only pointed to the fog, his finger shaking, and muttered, "Don't stay past dark." Then he rowed away before my boots even touched the sand. The island was small, half hidden under tangled trees that grew too close together. Their branches knotted like bones under skin. Birds didn't sing, insects didn't hum. The air was swollen with silence, thick, watching silence. I came because of the rumors. Strange sightings, vanishing fishermen, claw marks carved into hulls. The village on the mainland called it Hollow Shadows. They warned me it was alive. By midday I found tracks in the dirt, hooves but too wide with too many points. The forest pressed closer the deeper I went, and soon I realized the trees were scarred. Each trunk was gouged with claw marks, as though something massive had dragged itself past again and again. At dusk the air changed. The fog swelled up from the earth itself, curling between roots and licking at my ankles. That was when the sounds began. Low chittering, a rattling cough, wet footsteps. I turned, and in the mist I saw it. A tall figure, hunched and gaunt, its eyes glowing like coals shoved into a skull. Its mouth opened far too wide, skin splitting at the corners, and something like a laugh leaked out, though it sounded more like a crow choking. I ran, but the island wasn't empty. Shapes darted through the fog. A wolf with no fur, its skin crawling with black veins. A child-sized thing with backward joints, loping just outside my vision. Wings beating overhead, though nothing blocked the sky. Everywhere I turned, something waited. Their movements were wrong, too fast, too jerky, as if the island had puppeted them from bone and hunger alone. I reached the shore at last, heart battering my ribs, but the boat was gone. Only the sound of splashing, farther and farther out into the water as if dragged away. The fog crept thicker. The forest behind me hissed and clicked, voices muttering in tongues that scraped like stone. I thought of the boatman's words, the way his eyes refused to meet mine. Don't stay past dark, now the sun is gone. The shapes are stepping closer, unblinking, patient. And I understand. There was never a chance to leave. The island doesn't let anyone go. The island didn't have a name on any chart, but the locals on the coast called it Black Pines. From the mainland, you could only see the tips of dark trees rising out of the morning fog. No one lived there now, not since the fire 20 years ago. When the university sent Dr. Mara Kent to survey the soil for regrowth potential, she jumped at the chance. She'd always been drawn to lonely places, where the silence had weight. She arrived with 2 grad students, Dylan and Sarah, and an old fisherman named Ellis who agreed to ferry them across. "You will want to leave before dark," Ellis muttered as they loaded their equipment. "Things move out there when the sun goes down." Dylan laughed. "You mean animals?" "Something like that," Ellis said, not smiling. The trip was short, but the fog was so thick it felt endless. When the island appeared, it rose out of the mist like a bruise on the ocean. Jagged black pines, charred trunks, and gray soil. The air smelled faintly of ash even after all these years. They set up camp near the old settlement ruins, a handful of stone foundations and a rusted water tower. The ground was cold beneath their boots, and the wind carried a faint hum that sounded almost like voices. Mara began collecting samples while the others explored. By dusk, she'd found something odd. The soil near the center of the island pulsed faintly when she touched it, as if it were breathing. "Probably heat pockets," Dylan said, squatting beside her. But the ground didn't feel warm, it felt alive. That night, the wind rose, carrying a low groan through the trees. Sarah couldn't sleep. She swore she heard footsteps outside the tent, slow and deliberate. When she peeked out, she saw something pale moving between the pines. She woke the others, but by the time they looked, it was gone. Morning brought gray skies and uneasy silence. Birds perched on the trees but made no sound. Dylan climbed the ridge to get GPS coordinates and came back pale-faced. "The compass is spinning. Every direction points north." Ellis's warning echoed in Mara's head. She decided they'd leave before sunset. But when they reached the shore, the boat was gone, vanished into the fog. The tide had risen unusually high, swallowing the dock. Panic set in. They tried to radio the mainland, but static hissed in reply. Then the whispers returned. Faint at first, then layered, dozens of voices overlapping. They came from the forest, calling each of their names. Sarah turned toward the sound, tears streaking her face. "It's my brother," she whispered. "He died here." Mara grabbed her arm. "No one's here, Sarah." But Sarah tore free and ran into the woods. Dylan chased after her. Only Mara stayed behind, frozen. Minutes stretched. Then she heard Sarah scream, short, sharp, and cut off. When Dylan stumbled back, his face was scratched and gray. "She's gone," he said. She just sank into the ground. The soil around their feet began to ripple, softening into mud. Beneath it, shapes shifted. Arms, faces pressing up through the dirt, mouths opening and closing. The smell of rot filled the air. Dylan fired a flare, but the red light only revealed the horror around them. Dozens of human figures half buried in the earth, eyes open and glistening, whispering in a language made of breath and grief. Mara dragged Dylan toward the waterline, but the tide had turned black, thick as oil. Something moved beneath its surface, circling them. The island hummed louder, the vibration rising through her bones. "Help me!" Dylan screamed, and then the ground swallowed him, pulling him under like quicksand. His flashlight spun once in the air and went dark. Mara ran toward the center of the island, toward the old water tower. She climbed the rusted ladder, gasping for air. From the top, she could see the land pulsing like a single organism. Every tree, every root, every patch of soil breathed together, as though the island itself were alive and hungry. The faces in the ground turned upward, mouths open wide. A voice rose from them all at once, speaking in the same tone as her own. "You came back." Mara's vision blurred. She remembered reading a legend about a fire long ago, a failed settlement that tried to burn the forest to make room for farmland. The fire had consumed them all, and their ashes had become part of the soil. The island didn't grow back because it never died. When the first wave of fog rolled in again, Mara could barely see. The metal beneath her feet groaned, rust giving way. The tower collapsed into the pulsing earth, swallowing her whole. By dawn, the mist had cleared. The island stood silent once more. From the mainland, a fisherman reported seeing something new. A shape at the top of the ridge, a tree with branches red as flesh, swaying though there was no wind. Black pines had grown another root. The ferry was supposed to take 20 minutes, but after 30, all Riley could see was endless gray water. The mist hung thick, swallowing the horizon. She checked her phone again, no signal. The old ferryman hadn't spoken since they left the mainland, except to warn her not to stay overnight. She thought he was joking until she saw his eyes in the reflection of the wheelhouse window. They weren't the eyes of a man who joked. When the shape of the island appeared through the fog, it was smaller than she expected. Just a scatter of trees, a few black rocks, and the ruins of what looked like a lighthouse. The place had no name on maps, yet local fishermen whispered about it like it was alive. Riley had come to photograph it for her blog, Forgotten Places. She loved abandoned spots, the quiet ones left behind by time. But as soon as her boots hit the wet dock, she felt something wrong beneath her soles. The ground seemed to hum faintly, like a machine buried deep under the earth. "Last ferry leaves before dark," the ferryman rasped. "Don't be late." Then he pushed off, vanishing back into the fog. The silence that followed pressed against her skull. Riley moved through the forest, camera in hand. The trees leaned toward her, slick and twisted, their bark patterned like veins. Each click of her camera echoed too loud, bouncing back as if the island repeated it. When she reached the lighthouse ruins, she saw something strange carved into the stones. Spirals within spirals, drawn with sharp precision. In the center, a phrase half erased by time. "They hear the tide." The inside of the lighthouse was hollow and dark. She set up her tripod, checking her flashlight. A staircase led down, not up, a spiral sinking into the ground. She hesitated, but curiosity won. The air grew colder as she descended, until her breath fogged the beam of light. At the bottom, the stairs ended in a round chamber. The walls were damp stone carved with those same spirals. Water dripped from somewhere unseen. In the middle of the floor lay a circle of bones, human by the look of them, arranged around an open grate. Faint whispers rose from below, like voices carried through water. She should have run, but she leaned closer, holding her recorder over the grate. "Hello," she whispered. Something whispered back. The voice was her own. Riley stumbled back, nearly dropping her camera. The whispers grew louder, overlapping in a dozen tones of her own voice, repeating everything she'd said since stepping on the island. Her flashlight flickered, and for an instant she saw movement behind the walls, not shadows. Faces pressed against the stone from the inside, mouths moving without sound. She bolted up the stairs. The forest looked different when she emerged, thicker, darker. The dock was gone, replaced by wet sand that sloped into black water. She screamed for the ferryman, but only her own voice came back, warped and delayed, as if the island itself was repeating her. The tide had risen faster than it should have. Within minutes, it lapped at her ankles. She turned toward the trees, but the path she'd taken no longer existed. Every direction looked the same, every tree marked with spirals. Her camera beeped. A new photo had appeared in her gallery. She hadn't taken it. It showed her from behind, standing in the forest. Then another, closer this time. She dropped the camera and ran. The air buzzed like insects inside her ears. Whispers followed her between the trees. Hundreds of them, now in different voices. Men, women, children, some crying, some laughing. She tripped and hit the ground hard. When she looked up, the lighthouse stood before her again. Its walls whole, its lantern burning with a pale, shifting light. She crawled toward it, desperate for any sign of safety. The door swung open and warm yellow light spilled out. A man stood inside, the ferryman, but his eyes were wrong, empty sockets weeping salt water. His mouth opened and a wave of cold, briny air burst from it, carrying whispers that weren't words but memories. Riley's memories, her photos. Her voice, the island remembered her now. She tried to scream, but the air around her thickened like syrup. Her body seized, salt stinging her eyes, her mouth filling with the taste of the sea. When she blinked, she wasn't standing anymore. She was within the wall, face pressed into stone, lungs full of water, her own voice echoing faintly above ground for the next visitor to hear. By dawn, the tide had covered everything but the tip of the lighthouse. The ferryman's boat floated by again, empty. No one spoke of the island after that, but sometimes when the fog rolled in thick over the harbor, people swore they could hear the click of a camera from somewhere deep in the mist. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you would enjoy hearing more spine-chilling stories. A new one will be released every Saturday. If you would like me to read one of yours, you can send it to me, bitefear@gmail.com.